Hey guys, this is Aaron from MTGChallengers, and today I'll be taking a look at mono green aggro for Ixalan Standard. This is actually a build that Evan came up with. We were testing one day and he told me, hey, I came up with a mono green aggro list, and showed it to me, and it was a lot better than I was actually expecting it to be. This is certainly more of a brew than an established deck in this standard meta. There really haven't been any mono green lists that have topped since rotation. How he built it, he told me, was that he just went down the list of 1-drops, 2-drops, 3-drops, and just picked the best, most undercosted ones and jammed them into a deck along with some spells. So it's a really straightforward deck to play, very fun, and has a really consistent mana curve. So let's get started with our 1-drop creatures. We have a playset of Narnum Renegade, very decent card. A 1/2 Death Toucher for 1 is already solid, but the possibility to make it a 2/3 is really awesome. 2 powered creatures for 1 mana are pretty much always playable for aggro, so this certainly makes the cut. The only downside is that it's not going to get the counter if you play it turn 1, so it's a little slower than your standard 2-for-1 creature. The other 1-drop I have is Old Growth Dryads, 4 copies here as well. 1 mana 3/3, enough said. It's just so efficient, so aggressive to have on turn 1. Giving them a land is usually worth it, unless it's against another aggro deck like Red Deck Wins. Helping them speed up is really not what you want to do, so it gets sided out in those matchups, but overall it's an excellent card for an aggressive green deck like this one. Moving on up to the 2-drop creatures, I have 4 Green Wheel Liberator. Similar to the Renegade, except you really do need to get the Revolt off here in order for the card to be decent. A vanilla 2/1 for 2 is frankly terrible, but a 4/3 for 2 is awesome. Just play this card around what your opponent does, and it will be good in most cases. Then we have a playset of Resilient Kenra. Really awesome card. The ideal case for this deck is to drop it turn 2 after a turn 1 Dryads, so you can attack with a 5/5 turn 2. On its own, it's a Grizzly Bear, a 2/2 for 2, which isn't bad, and the Eternalize works really well since you can reanimate it, and then it'll give something +4/+4, which can really punch through that last bit of damage. Starting with the 3-drops, we have another playset, Death Gorge Scavenger. One of the best dinosaurs in Standard at the moment. It's graveyard hate on a creature, and each card you exile gives you a bonus. Either you gain some life, or it becomes a 4/3 for 3, both of which are great. Really good in particular against Red Deck Wins and other aggro decks, since it will gain you a lot of life over the course of a game, and once you drop your larger creatures, it's really difficult for them to beat you with their smaller ones. Next we have a 3 of, Ronus the Indomitable, the God for Green. My second favorite god behind Hazaret. As a 3-drop, it's really good to get out there early. The restriction is really easy to meet. We have 8 creatures that have 4 power or greater, and also plenty of ways to pump up the smaller ones to 4 power or greater, so it will be able to attack and block pretty much immediately, and then you untap with him and can pump up your other stuff, which also helps to keep his restriction met, and let them punch through with trample. And the Death Touch is just the icing on the cake to be able to block and kill creatures with more than 5 toughness if they have any. Now we have our 2 big, basically win conditions. First, Ripjaw Raptor as a 4 of. Excellent card, the best dinosaur in Standard at the moment in my opinion. Card draw isn't something green usually gets, so the ability to have a 4/5 for 4 mana that can bash in and draw you into more stuff is really excellent. For your opponent, it's really a lose-lose situation, because his ability is going to make them a lot more hesitant to attack and block since you're going to be drawing cards each time. It's especially good against Red since he has 5 toughness, so they're going to have to burn him out with 2 spells, so they get 2 for 1 and we get to draw 2 more cards. And finally, we have 4 Verduous Gearhulk, just a huge bomb that really messes things up for your opponent. Always awesome since it's either a huge boost to your whole team that you can divide up as you choose for maximum advantage, or it's an 8/8 Trampler for 5 mana. It's never not a good thing when you draw this card, and it's definitely the deck's main win condition. Particularly good against, again, Red Deck Wins, since the only thing that can really deal with it is a Braid, so otherwise they're stuck trying to chump all that trample damage with their little 1 and 2 toughness creatures. And you can even get it out a little early if you drop the Monument, which we'll get to shortly. So that concludes our creature base, pretty sweet stuff. We also do have a few spells to go along with them, the main one being Blossoming Defense, 4 copies here. A just generally excellent spell, cheap, efficient, you can use it in just about every situation to push through more damage, survive a block, cast it in response to a removal spell to protect it. There's pretty much always something cool and advantageous you can do with it, it's almost never a dead card. And for the other spell, I have 3 Ronus's Monument. Great card for this deck, especially since we run 31 green creatures, so more than half of the total 60 card deck. So we're going to be getting the trigger off of it pretty much every turn, sometimes multiple times in a turn. +2/+2 and trample really gives you an advantage, and my absolute favorite thing to do with this deck is to play the Monument turn 3 and then reduce the cost so you get to play Gear Hulk turn 4. So you get all those counters and get an additional +2/+2 on top of everything for that turn. Or you can go turn 4 Ripjaw Raptor, 3 mana, and still be able to play a 1-drop to get 2 triggers, or be able to have an extra mana open for Blossoming Defense to protect it. It's just a really strong enabler for the deck, and one of my favorite cards. Let's now take a look at the mana base. The mana base for this deck is really quite simple, as you'd expect for a monocolored deck. First, for some utility, we have 4 Haship Oasis, untapped land that can give us green if we need it, and you can activate it to Giant Growth a creature. Ideally, you want to do it to one of the Tramplers, just to be able to push through that extra damage, and between the Gear Hulk and the abilities from the Monument and Ronus, there'll be plenty of them to choose from. Then I have a playset of Sunscorched Desert, the perfect complementary land for an aggro deck. It pings them for 1 right away, you can use it for generic mana, comes in untapped, and then you can sack it in the later game to activate the pump ability on the Oasis. And finally, I have 14 basic forests, giving us a total of 22 lands. Exactly where we need to be. We do have the Gear Hulks as 5-drops, but we have the Monuments that make them cheaper to cast, so 22 lands has been working out really well for this deck. That concludes the main board. Let's move over to the sideboard. Life Goes On is fantastic side tech against aggro decks. I'm running 3 of it. Yet another part of the deck that just really punishes red deck wins and decks similar to it. When they swing out against you, you block their guys, kill some of them, and then pay 1 mana and gain 8 life. They almost never come back from that. It's such a slowdown. You're going to stay alive so much longer, and then you're going to be able to play your Gear Hulks and just take over the game from there. For some removal against other aggressive and mid-range decks, I have 2 copies of Prey Upon. We run a lot of bigger creatures, so this lets us use their stats to take out their guys, which having some removal is really important for a mono green deck, because there typically isn't a lot. Then I have Heroic Intervention as a 3 of, mainly against control decks that have a mixture of spot removal and board wiping. Hexproof and Indestructible take care of both of those problems. A playset of Appetite for the Unnatural is crucial for a mono green sideboard, since you really need a way to take care of artifacts and enchantments, and this is a fine way to do it. I wish it was naturalized. 3 mana is just more expensive for this kind of ability than I prefer, but gaining some life on top of it is nice, and again, combats more aggressive decks. As essentially a 3rd copy of Prey Upon, I have a single Savage Stomp in the sideboard. We run 8 dinosaurs, so it will be strictly better than Prey Upon a decent bit of the time, since it will cost the same if you target a dinosaur and also give it a counter, which is really good for the Scavenger in particular since it only has 2 toughness. And finally, for some graveyard hate in the side, I have 2 Scavenger Grounds. We do have the Deathgorge Scavenger in the main board that can take out individual cards, but we have this here just in case we need to nuke everything, and we run a lot of other deserts, so we can activate this multiple times if we need to. And that's it for this deck tech. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to see more, check out my deck tech playlist and subscribe to our TappedOut page. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and of course, subscribe to the channel for more Magic the Gathering content.